Hello and welcome to C2 Part 2, IR Command Creation and Editing. The software that we'll be using to view, learn, and edit IR commands is the IR Manager. With the Compass Control software suite installed on your PC, you'll find the IR Manager with its blue nautical icon. And here we are, going to teach you how we learn and edit those commands. And also how to test those commands. We test the commands using KD-MC1000 and or the KD-HD Lite, which is the matrix switchers with the master controller. And it's all done over your local area network. So you'll have Compass Control open on your PC, you'll open the IR Manager, we'll be on the same network with the master controller. And in order to test commands, there is a property or a setting we'll choose in our window where we could choose any of the multifunction ports on the MC1000. You'll want to choose the port that corresponds with the connection that your IR emitter is connected to. So let's go ahead, open up our IR Manager. And we could choose any device to open by going to File, Open, and from the get-go, or from the very beginning, it's the default directory of the Key Digital Compass Control software, which is C, Program Files x86 if you have that. If you don't have x86, it'll be just the program files. Key Digital, Compass Control, Library, and IR databases. In here, you can see all of our IR databases, which are organized separate folders by brand. There are well over 125,000 IR code sets, product by product by product. So let's just go to something simple here, like Apple. And you see here now, this is the library name, here's the brand, here's the product type, and then as we click the actual model, we can see those code sets. If you'd like to test a command, you want to enter the correct IP address in here. This IP address should correspond with the IP address that we've set in the Master Controller Device Manager as the host IP. Choose the type of master controller that you're working with, and then specify your testing port. You could then choose any command and test that function. When you test it on your master controller, you should actually see the corresponding IR emitter light blinking. So as I press here, I'm looking at my master controller and I see the corresponding IR port blinking there. And of course, if I had an IR emitter connected to that port, if that is a blinking type IR emitter, as the one that we include, you would also see that emitter blinking. So now, on my screen, I will change to IR port 6, so we'll see the other bookend of our MC1000. Oop, actually made a mistake there, didn't I? The learning port, I'll choose IR sensor, back to there, the default port. Testing port, now IR6 is blinking. So this is a very valuable exercise, of course, if you have many devices. For example, let's just take a look at a cable box like a Motorola or a Scientific Atlanta. How about Cisco? I saw that as I was scrolling through, so let me swing back up here. Cisco. If we look here, of course we know they make many set-top boxes. So we could see all of the different models that we have in here. And of course there's many popular models, RNG, for example. HD Explorer, also very popular. Now you'll notice in this software we have the ability to organize all the commands by what's called an action ID. See, I could name a function anything I'd like here, but an action ID, if I double click in that cell, makes me choose from a defined list so that you can speak the language of our software. We'll get into that more as we go on. So you may have many devices. So you may have many devices available under a brand name, and you want to find out, well, I think it's the HD Explorer, but perhaps it is the RNG series, or perhaps it's code group 2 RNG or code group 1 RNG. This is the place you'll test to find out what is the correct match for you by putting the IR emitter over that device and testing some of these codes and seeing how and when it responds. So how about if you'd like to learn IR codes? If you'd like to learn IR codes, you can do that using the KD-MC1000, the built-in IR learner window. You cannot do that on your KD HD Lite Matrix MC. That's the 4x4 light, 6x6 light, 8x8 light. They're not able to learn IR codes. And just like for testing IR codes, it's done over the IR manager. And you have to do it over the network with your MC1000. We'll use the same software, the IR manager, and we'll hold our remote and point it towards the IR learning window to do this. So I'm going to enter back into our IR manager, and now I'm going to do a new IR. You'll want to find somewhere that you can place it. Do not place it in the default directory, because every time we do a software release, we will update that IR code set, RS-232 code set, and TCP/IP code set. So I'm going to call this my KD MLV 4x2. And you notice I, by habit, had placed this extension here, IR, but in fact I don't need that. Why? Because it naturally saves as _ir.lib, meaning it's a library type, or it's in a library extension with an IR type. So I have the name of it here. Now I use the little blue plus to enter manually my brand name. I will choose from my device type. This is our multi-view product. And I enter manually the model name, and now we see here's the library name, here's my brand, product category, and product. It's totally empty right now. However, if I look at this product, it is a matrix switcher with 4 inputs, 2 outputs. And as we look at the remote in the IR manual, or the IR remote in the owner's manual here, take a quick peek at what those codes look like and what the buttons look like, just for all of our visual learners out there. Here we are, power on, power off. Output 1, select input 1, 2, 3, 4, or enter a 2K or a 4K quadrant mode. Same button set for output 2. Then we have a numerical keypad, 0 through 9, for calling our presets, window processing presets, and then R1, R2, R3, which is kind of like your functions, or we call them reserve 1, reserve 2, and reserve 3. So I enter here, and I'm going to say that there are 2 outputs, and it's given me this tab here. And there are 4 inputs. Common all is going to be where any commands will go that should apply to the unit as a whole. For example, our power ons and our power offs. We'll continue to add here. And these will be our numericals. Excuse me for that. Now, without having to do each and every one of these, we'll just show it. Oops, that should be number 5. And then our R1, R2, R3, which may be in this action ID. Let's see, we call them reserve again. There they are. It's nice to see that we do that, since that's something we do. So what this action ID is, again, is a way that our software understands power is power. So if you were to, in your software here, need to take one device out and put it in a new device, we know that any command you put on a power on button is a power on button. So call the remove the old power on and associate it with the new. But function name, on the other hand, I'm able to name it however I'd like. Power on, power off. Oops, that was probably something as I was speeding through hastily. Don't need that. So we'll go through and just give a name. And you're going to actually, when you're in Compass Navigator and you're calling these commands, you're actually going to see it with both names. So it's very easy for you to identify what's what there. So I'm just double clicking in here, making that happen. Good. Save. So now it's time to learn this command. So it's done over the network. Now here's a tricky thing. Make sure you have chosen to use your learning port, your sensor, as your IR learning port. As you see, you could actually learn through all 6 multifunction ports. They're not powered, so you would use an IR connecting block. But it's kind of a nice fail-safe, isn't it? Just in case you were to have greasy fingers and drop your master controller and hear a little IR sensor rattling around in there, perhaps. We will enter Start Learning Mode. And as you press that button, it holds blue so that you're able to tell that it's currently tied up on the network here. And what I do is I just hold my IR remote about 4 to 7 inches off of the face of the MC1000. Always helps to have a dimly lit room. And I will press the code just nice and lightly. And each time I press it here, I'm getting my codes. And look, some of them weren't recognized. I pressed a little lightly on these, didn't I? I could just press this X to get rid of them. And if I'd like, I could continue learning since I'm still in that learning mode. But I'm not really so concerned about that because I have 2 really good samples and I see that they recognize the NEC protocol on them. So what I do is adjust according to protocol. Why? Because we know what the world's perfect NEC formatted commands look like. And so we adjust what you've learned against that perfect command. And here's what the hex looks like in burst data, 20 milliseconds long, 36 pulses. And in burst data, now this is not Pronto hex. This is our own proprietary hex. And now I press OK. So, of course, I'd repeat that for the whole keypad. Or I could go to this output 1 after I do that and add some functions there, which if you remember, there were 6 buttons per output. So we look here, so here's our output 1 commands, 2K quadrant mode, 4K quadrant mode, and output 1, select input 1, 2, 3, or 4. So here we are, input 1, output 1. That's output is indicated with the greater than, less than caret. And you notice we don't go any higher than input 4. Why? Because you've already defined that this is a 4-input product. Now this is something you do only if you're using a matrix, for example, or a multi-zone device. It's not necessary if you're using just a standard remote, of course, because DVD player, for example, cable box, they don't have outputs and inputs necessarily. Now I can come over here and again, sensor, this is the IP address of my master controller. Learn this command, and I'm still in that start learning mode. I could stop it if you'd like. Then begin it again. Okay, it's held blue there. Output 1, input 1. Collect a few samples on that. You notice it's very nice that you could actually see all of these here. Now this one looks pretty similar, but not quite as perfect that we recognize the protocol. So I just adjust that to the NEC. And now we have that command. And now we could use those methods we showed you before to test that function with the device if you have that available. Now in some cases, a very common way of importing an IR code is not to have the IR remote, but instead to use Pronto hex codes for those commands. And it's something Key Digital does. We often have the Pronto hex sheet linked on our website for respective products. So for that, we're going to go ahead and add a new product here. Our KD HD 4x1 Pro K, for example. It's an HDMI switcher with 4 ins and 1 output. Oh, not 1 in, 4 out. That'd be a distribution amp, wouldn't it? 4 in, 1 out. And if we go through to this product on our website, and you can see what it looks like, and we scroll down to the download section, and there you are, your icon of Pronto hex. Open up that document, and here you can see the commands that we have, including this here, power toggle. So I'm going to copy that, Control C or right click copy. And that would be a common all command, wouldn't it? So add that function, say power toggle. Name it what I'd like after assigning the action ID. And we just, instead of pressing learn edit, we do a Pronto hex. Paste that in there. Press OK. Now we have the burst data. If you'd like, you could even see what that looks like here. Very good. So I save that library and of course continue to add functions and import them in the same method. One additional way that you can actually learn codes is according to not just Pronto Hex, but any kind of hex format. So for example, here we have NEC. So this is if you get a hex sheet from a manufacturer, like an Excel spreadsheet this typically comes in. I believe it's Denon and Marantz who are really good about having that Excel spreadsheet. It might be Onkyo Integra though, where they have they tell you the hex codes of everything, and every protocol has different formatting for what are the parameters for the address of the IR code and the hex for that. So I mean, it tells you right here what the code typically looks like. So let me do that FFFF here and what this looks like, and IR is usually some kind of inverse of each other. So if I have, for example, E is 1110 and 7 is 0111, I believe it'd work if I did this, just kind of pulling randomly. And we press OK, and here's what that IR code would look like. Now I'd like to take a quick moment to just go through some of these device properties we could apply here. And we already talked about this multi-zone switcher classification we could provide, where we could say there's 2 outputs and 4 inputs. A voltage level, that's if you have a device that for some reason always needs a specific voltage, you could adjust that here. Now this is not actually available with the MC1000 or the HD Light matrix, which is fixed to 5 volts for the IR. However, in future master controllers, control processors, there will be flexible voltage from 5 to 12 volts, and that was also available on the MC2500. Default repeat settings. This is quite useful. Well, this has rarely been useful, but if a device doesn't respond very quickly to multiple button presses, you might want this default delay is a way that we always offer that little bit of a cushion between, a little bit of a delay between each command. Because in your programming, you may recall that we have the delay event in action, which is like a pause icon in your events and actions tab. But even if you don't use that, we actually, all of the commands are going to be separated in this device's case by 0.02 seconds. And this is our default setting for IR, RS, and IP. Then you have repeat and always repeat, repeat while holding. Now keep in mind, this would be, if you apply this here, every command you do would now be repeated. Every command for the device. Whereas if I instead went to and I said, oh, this is a device that needs the power on, or more specifically the power off, right? Power off, something like a projector might need a power off, you might need to press it twice. I can actually edit that and learn the code and then have a repeat here that says, oh, whenever we press power off, that's always going to happen twice. So this would be specific for the command itself. Again, the IP address of the master controller we're learning or testing with, the type of master controller, the IP port, the testing port, these are your multifunctions, and the learning port, where again, don't be tricked. Always make sure you're learning out of that sensor. 99.999% of the time, people are always learning through that sensor. And you saw I built output 1 before, but how about output 2? It's empty. You could actually clone output 1 because, of course, it has the same commands. However, we now have it say output 1, input 2. Or, excuse me, output 2, select input 1. So I would just go through here and edit this to get this, of course, correct, because we're now in output 2. And then, of course, this would need to be relearned, wouldn't it? Since it would be a different discrete IR command. So save your work, and that is how you test IR commands, learn IR commands with the remote, and how you and a tutorial of the device properties. Okay, so that should do it for C2 Part 1, where we taught you how to view, edit, learn IR codes with the IR remote, import IR codes via Pronto Hex, and importing IR codes via the manufacturer's Hex sheet.